People who've seen nice people finally snap. What happened? I had just started high school and there was a new kid. I was from a 1 primary 1 high school town, so all the kids already knew each other. He was a giant aboriginal kid who was quiet with no friends, so my friend and I befriended him. We always chatted to him and he was so lovely, always softly spoken and generally just so nice, like holding doors open for us and bashfully smiling when we would go out of our way to be friendly to him. Anyway, he started getting picked on by the bad boy of our grade relentlessly. One day he snapped and beat him up with a garbage can and was expelled and I never saw him again. Bully, bullies kid, school, bullied kid, fights back, school, you weren't supposed to do that. I mentioned this in another thread. Samoan friend, happiest, most friendly guy you ever want to meet. Some guy said something about his sister and of course it made him mad. My friend went after him and caught him. Punched about 3 times and we realized he was going to kill him. It took 3 of us normal sized guys to hold his arm back from hitting the guy one more time. We told the other to run. Like run fricking now. He did. Our friend was mad at us for a while for stopping him, then he went home. The next day it was as if nothing happened. He just went back to being a super nice guy. P.S. I forgot a couple days later our friend's big brothers were looking for that same guy that got the crap beat out of him. I don't think they found him but never did see him again. This woman, Mary, I worked with was always pleasant and cheerful, said hello in the lunchroom and was generally liked. She worked in finance in special projects. She said she wanted to retire in a few years and she had been working there for 15 years. Her boss started pressuring her to complete our annual budget report faster, but this thing is huge and comprehensive and a figurative beast. Mary told the boss it would be ready in a couple of weeks, per the usual schedule. The boss said that it needed to be completed within 1 week to give to the higher ups. Mary said it wasn't possible. Boss emailed Mary and CC a bunch of co-workers and the assistant managers, calling Mary out for a poor work ethic and for making the department look bad. Mary said it wasn't possible and didn't appreciate being bullied. She put in her notice to retire by the end of the week, leaving her boss high and dry. She was the only one who could do the budget report in a timely manner, so the department was double fricked. Good for her. Back in 5th grade, I was super lucky to have the elementary school's favorite teacher. Every single student loved her. My class was always super loud and annoying. We were working on some assignment before pay, and everyone was passing her off. She was only allowing students to go out if they finished the assignment. My slow butt was unfortunately one of the last kids in the room. This one student, who was a god-awful and annoying shitbag kid, was being way over the top. My teacher got up, put her hands over her ears and just started screaming, "Shut the frick up. Just shut up. Shut up. Shut up." And she just stomped out of the room still screaming with her hands covering her ears. All of us just sat there in horror. Couple of kids just left to go to pay, and I sat there just trying to finish the assignment. Our principal came into the room a few minutes later just telling the rest of us to go out to pay, but she made the shitbag kid stay in the room with her. He was moved into the other 5th grade teacher's room after this. She was completely normal and fine after coming back, and there was nothing else that went wrong for the rest of the year. Just worked her butt off and made all of us love her by her caring soul and all of that fun stuff. But that moment completely traumatized me. A long time ago, I used to do call center tech support for fairly complex issues. A really nice, quiet guy went through the same training class. He talked if you talked to him, but never went out of his way to chat. Right after training, the call center changes a ton of stuff. We start getting squeezed on the amount of time we can do documentation, how much research time we have, just metrics in general. It was utter bulls, because the favorites got to go on smoke breaks as often as they wanted with the managers. We'd essentially be punished for that because we had to keep the average numbers in a certain area. He did all the right things. Talked to his manager, talked to their manager, then to HR. It kept getting worse, plus enforced overtime. Then he got a super long call. He was on it at least 2 hours, about a complex issue, and the customer was just straight up abusing him, but he had to take it because the managers wouldn't give permission for him to hang up, and they were basically screaming at him to resolve this issue and get to his next call. But we couldn't end calls. The customer had to. One day he just stood up, stepped onto his chair, then onto his desk, threw his headset on the desk and sort of growled something like "frick this," quietly. He looked around, staring people in the face, especially the people who took those long breaks and the managers. Then he walked out and no one ever saw him again. Everyone was super quiet and afraid to move or say much of anything. My best friend had lost his mom to murder a few months prior when we were in the 10th grade. Somehow he had pulled himself together just enough to start going back to school. I don't know how he handled it with being an only child and growing up without a father. His mom was all he had. A kid that thought he was popular that got on everyone's nerves cracked wise to my friend's face about his mom's death. What he said isn't exactly sure. My friend threw him on the ground and punched him in the face multiple times. The end result was a broken nose, a broken left orbital, and my friend got kicked out of school. We were very grateful he taught him a lesson, but saddened it had to come at such a high cost. I'm not sure whether they kicked the correct one out, honestly. It's like curing symptoms, but not the cause. She was an assistant manager and was known for being soft-spoken. At a manager meeting, one of the general managers, who was known for being a total jackass to everyone, was going off on how every store should be run. Well, she snapped, "You have the highest turnover rate out of any store in the district. You can't keep employees for more than 6 months before they just quit, all saying you were the problem. Maybe you should take that advice you're giving us and use it on yourself." What happened next was she put in her 2 weeks not even 3 days later. The manager who she yelled at was transferred to a different location out of that district. The store he managed has since bounced back and has been doing very well. God, I fantasize about saying something like this to my boss every dang day. I used to manage a pub in a small rural town, population around 300, in Australia. Running the pub was mostly a business of maintaining the peace between the itinerant oil and gas workers and the local cattle industry families who resented their presence. The flashpoint for this conflict was frequently the jukebox in the bar. The oil and gas guys were usually city folks on fly-in, fly-out rotations, so their musical tastes somewhat differed to the locals. Anyway, so there's a guy we'll call Brian who is the heir apparent to one of the larger cattle empires in the district. Super cool guy. Everyone liked him, would give you the shirt off his back sort of thing. Brian had a daughter who'd just married and was pregnant with her first kid. Sometime during the pregnancy she'd noticed a dodgy looking blemish on her butt, though she figured she'd wait till she had the kid to get it looked at. Months later, she's had the kid, goes to get it checked. Skin cancer, metastasized everywhere. Weeks to live. There's a huge funeral. Brian is destroyed. At the end of the church service there's a procession of vehicles out to the cemetery. Some Halliburton truck, impatient to be caught behind it, plows down the side of the road and spews dust over the whole thing. From then on Brian would be down the pub every other night. He'd get half smashed, and then put that fricking "If I Die Young" song on the jukebox that was popular like 10 years back. Man was circling the drain but nobody really knew what to do about it. Anyway, one night, Brian's at the bar and the song is on the jukebox. Some guys in Halliburton patched high-vis start bitching about the song choice. I tell them to just leave it be, but one of them gets up and unplugs the jukebox. Brian plugs it back in and puts the song on again. One of the Halliburton guys calls Brian a depressing old C. Brian tells him to get fricked and, well, I don't remember who threw the first punch, but between the fight starting and the couple of seconds it took me to break it up, Brian did enough damage to put the guy in an ambulance. For those wondering how this all turned out for Brian, there was no trouble with the police because the town didn't even have a police officer at the time and the gas worker couldn't have his boss knowing he'd been brawling with the locals at the pub. I haven't lived out that way for a couple years, but last I heard Brian was still running the family cattle stations and de facto raising his granddaughter because the son-in-law works FIFO, 3 on and 1 off. An acquaintance of mine, Daryl, was always a quiet kid that bothered nobody. Given that he was 6 feet 5 inches and 250 pounds, he played football and was generally respected and liked. One day in Spanish class the class clown was making his usual rounds talking crap, until he got to this one girl, Nelly. He never really made fun of people of the opposite gender, so everyone around him was telling him to frick off. But he kept going and finally got to the birthmark on her neck that was very large and dark red. He told her that it dropped her a few numbers down, At this point just about everyone and their grandma in the class was standing up about to rush him, save for Daryl and a few others, until Daryl got up, waltzed over to the class clown, picked him up by his hair and said, and I quote, "If you don't shut the frick right now I am going to put you through that fricking wall," points to the nearest wall. He dropped the clown and walked away. A few seconds later, with his band of merry men behind him, the clown tries to jump Daryl in the middle of the class. Daryl then proceeds to elbow him across the room, run over, pick him up by the shoulder, and put his hand through the drywall right next to the clown's head. Security by this point was called and both Daryl and the clown were arrested, with both only getting off with fines for damages. Every day, the spackle patch where the hole used to be humbles me every day. Daryl is a cool guy. Had a friend, Jerry, in year 12 that was 7 feet-ish, and Jerry was massive. He had some sort of giant's disorder that made him huge. Recently he had been getting a lot of crap about his mother dying. One day Jerry just had enough. He proceeds to pick up the bully who was at the time and fling him several feet like he was a bag of feathers. Then he goes up to him and picks up each leg and stomps on them like they were twigs. That crunch sound was horrible. Next time anyone talks crap about my mom I will make you effing suffer. I believe he served a few months in jail, had some community service and had to repeat year 12. The bully ended up in the ICU for a day for his legs and hip. He landed on it and needed to use a cane for a long time. Back in the 6th grade I was in a class with this kid we'll call Hudson. Now Hudson was the nicest, calmest kid in the entire school and almost never spoke a word. Then came along someone who we'll call Will. Will was from a nearby city, and since we were all from a small little town he thought of himself as above everyone else. This resulted in him being an overall piece of crap to everyone around him, whether it be students, EAs or even teachers. One day Will decided he wanted to try picking on Hudson, who was sat quietly reading a book. Will walked up to him, spat in his face and took his book and proceeded to tear out pages from it. Now, Hudson was a huge bookworm, so seeing a book having its pages being torn out by Will must have snapped something, because he lets out this unholy shriek and launches himself out of his chair and right onto him. Hudson then proceeds to beat the absolute crap out of him, and then just when you thought he was done he grabs the book and begins smacking him with it. I'm talking meaty slaps here, these could be heard very clearly. After almost a full minute of Hudson beating him with a book, a teacher finally returns to the class only to see the quiet kid beating the ever-loving crap out of the prick with Harry Potter, the Deathly Hallows. If I remember correctly, Will managed to get off with only 3 days suspension and Hudson got at least a full week. When Will came back he had a broken nose and enough bruises to make him look like a human grape if you looked at him right. Needless to say, Will didn't mess with anyone after that. I guess his love for Harry Potter was very serious. One of my middle school friends, whom we'll call Bob, was about a half foot shorter than everyone else. Everyone was around 5 feet. He was an interesting, in a good way, dude. Interested in learning, played video games, was great to hang out with, but he looked scrawny. Didn't look like he could hurt anything if I'm being honest. For some context to the story, our gym teacher was an butthole. Gave nicknames, some good, some bad, to everyone. He was always sarcastic, always berating everyone, speaking down to us instead of encouraging them. One day the gym teacher says something about Bob's mom, which Bob's mom had fibromyalgia and some other conditions making her weak and unhealthy not by choice, and something in Bob snapped. Bob completely took down this 6.5 feet monster gym teacher. Gym teacher looked like he stood no chance at that time. They were quickly pulled apart and Bob got expelled and had to move school, while the gym teacher was fired for fighting a student and being an overall butthole. Older brother's wedding. He's a very nice guy, almost too nice. He had a horrible girlfriend. He adored her though. She told him that he wasn't good enough and that she would break up with him unless he bought her this super fancy ring and married her. He did. His wedding was very stressful, and she was extra nasty. After they cut the cake, she got herself a huge slice and left him with none, telling him he should go on a diet. For context, he was underweight. He was working his way up to average. He snapped, threw a handful of cake at her pretty dress and hair, then told her to expect divorce papers to sign. He proceeded to scream, cry, and rant about how horrible she was and how she made him suicidal. He's better now. They split up and live in different continents. Sorry for bad grammar and typos. I'm on mobile. Also sorry for flaws in the story. This was quite a while ago. Dang dude, frick that woman. When I was in high school, my group of like 6 friends were sitting at a round table in the cafeteria for breakfast. A table over, some girls had been tossing small chunks of their food in our direction. My one friend, M, wore her hair in an unusual, spiked up style, and I guess the girls at the table were trying land food in her hair while cackling to themselves. Cue my quiet, sweet, introverted friend, K, getting so angry I swear steam was coming out of her ears. One of the girls had thrown a decent sized piece of her egg patty at us and it landed on the floor near K's foot. K proceeded to step on the egg patty, pick it up off the ground, walk over to the table of bullies, and shove the egg directly into the mouth of the one WHO had thrown it. This was such an amazing moment in my high school memory. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, as K was the last person I would have expected to do that. Of course she did get in trouble, but she didn't regret it one bit. Frick yeah, K. Guy I'd worked with for about 10 years. Never could get ahead at work. Wasn't bad but just didn't really excel. He was always kind, always ready to laugh and crack a joke. Never saw or heard him be mean, but apparently him and his wife were having some trouble, though I'd not heard him talk about it much. But one day while his youngest was out at church with a family member, he flipped out and shot his wife, then himself. Another woman I worked with even prior to that, but at the same place, was super sweet and always smiling. She was mid-divorce and drowned her 3-year daughter in a bathtub at her dad's, the kid's grandpa's, because she didn't want to share her with her ex after the divorce. She's still in prison as far as I know. Both are kinda fricked up. Where the frick do you work, dude? A guy I knew freshman year was super chill. We'll call him James. He was the guy that if you didn't like him or picked on him, everyone just hated you. So one day this absolute douche of a junior who thought he was so tough cause he was just older than him was just being a douche and picking on a group of freshmen for literally nothing. So James did the appropriate thing and stepped and told the junior to knock it off. Now James wasn't a very big dude. Maybe 5 feet 6 inches and 120 maybe, give or take, and the junior was about 5 minutes and 11 seconds and 190, a fairly large difference. So this junior dude is like acting all tough and being a douche like usual, and James just sucker punches this dude in the stomach and proceeds to rock this dude's crap. The junior goes to the hospital and had a broken arm, 3 broken ribs and a pretty messed up face. Nobody really bothered to ask James why he was able to beat this dude up so bad, but bottom line is, we all became very scared of James. Holy crap, James. He wasn't the nicest kid around. He really meant well, but being severely autistic, he didn't understand social cues or the toll what he said took. A couple of popular guys thought this was hilarious and loved to pick on him endlessly. This went on for years before one day he told them to frick off. They of course started mocking him more, asking him what he was going to do about it, and started pushing him around. Big mistake. What followed was a scream so loud and ear-piercing the whole school heard it from the opposite end. The guy getting picked on lunged at the bully in the middle and started wailing on him while his buddies watched shocked until blood started flying and they tried pulling him off. Mistake number 2, since the fury was now directed at them. Another higher pitched scream was let out and he started beating the 2 of them with the strength you could only find in a life or death situation. It took 3 teachers to restrain him and 2 more to pull the bullies away, who were fighting back, tears and bloody noses, trying to save face by shouting something about kicking the autistic kid's butt later. The victim was given a 3-week suspension and sent home, while the bullies were given the option to move schools and avoid punishment or stay and risk expulsion for gang violence. Only 1 moved away and the other 2 were never seen again at that school. At least the bullies were taken care of for once. Usually that doesn't happen, but dang, that's intense. In middle school, my 6'2" gentle giant friend, who is literally the nicest guy you'd ever meet, got teased about his mom by some short popular kid. My friend no hesitation picked him up by his shirt and slammed him against the locker at eye level and said, "Never talk about my mom like that." One of my favorite memories of him. One of my friends, a nice kid, was getting crap talked by some buttholes, and when one of them made a comment about his mom, he literally dragged him by his shirt into the bathroom and broke his nose, and left him covered in bruises. Nice Asian family across the street in suburban OKC woke up to helicopters and SWAT one morning. The father had killed whole family and then himself. So this story is from the time I was in high school. 2 years ago to be exact. Our group had this guy. We'll call him N. He was pretty popular and everyone liked him. He was the perfect blend of jock and nerd. You want to break up a fight, you call N. You want someone to play the piano for your musical, you call N. You want help with mathematics or physics, you call N. You want a midfielder for the football, soccer, team YO, you call N. You want to talk to someone, you call N. So we were in the mess when a guy, let's call him A, started teasing our friend, P, because how fat and ugly she was. And his friends were laughing, passing comments all around. N told P to ignore the BS. Then A and his friends started throwing paper bits and food at us. N told A to quit it. A didn't listen and told P that her father left because he could stand how ugly she was. This was pretty much the last straw. N got up, grabbed A and threw him against the wall, like a bag. A's friends got up and N punched both of them in the face and one of them ended up with a bloody nose. N went back A and laid it to him, at least 10 to the face. It was at this time that me and my friends could separate them. A ended up with a 1-week suspension and 2 broken teeth. N also got a 1-week suspension, but his mother told us she is proud of him when she invited all of us for dinner. She even told P that she will be going to the school with P's mom to talk to the principal about this matter. All in all, N and his family are the most wholesome people I've ever met. N got up, grabbed A and threw him against the wall, like a bag. A's friends got up and N punched both of them in the face and one of them ended up with a bloody nose. N went back A and laid it to him, at least 10 to the face. Just imagine the sheer amount of fear A felt when he saw his only hope of rescue get BTFO right before N turned his attention back to him. A lady where I used to work was subjected to constant gender-based harassment by a much older co-worker and the company failed to do anything about it. He was showing up at her house, eventually forcing her to move house. After she moved into the new house, he bought the house next door. She arrived to work with a baseball bat and stopped at reception to ask if Tom was in. When they asked why, she calmly told them she was there to kill him. She walked upstairs to his office. Reception called ahead and had him take the fire escape, and she instead demolished his office until the police arrived. She was not charged. The company and police knew she had announced her intentions to reception as a cry for help, so she didn't actually find him, because it was clear that if she had found him she would have killed him. She took some sick leave and eventually returned to work, and the company put her on a project with this guy as her manager. Because frick, protecting victimized women, right? TLDR, nice guy put up with bully making fun of him, but snapped when jerk said something about his girlfriend. A friend was nicknamed Rat because he was skinny with a big nose. Super nice guy who had a lot of friends but never a girlfriend. Senior year of high school, he has a girlfriend who also rode the same bus as us. The guy who, though he was so cool, starts asking her how she could date Rat because he was so ugly. He had bullied Rat for years, who always seemed to ignore it. Then the bully asked the girlfriend if she felt fat standing next to Rat. He could have said anything about Rat with no issue, but once he started making fun of his girlfriend, it was over the line. They start pushing and shoving on the bus. The bully challenges him to a fight. They all get off at the next stop. I still remember everyone plastered against the back windows of the bus to watch what was going on. Bully had his fists up and dancing around like he was a boxer. Rat threw one punch and down went the jerk. Broke his nose and cheekbone. Pushed part of his nose into his brain. He needed surgery and had to wear a cage around his face when he returned to school. The whole time the jerk kept calling Rat's girlfriend names, knowing as long as he had the cage on his face nothing would be done. After months of rehab and training, he decided to challenge Rat to another fight. They get off the bus together again, and again he puts up his fists and dances around. Again Rat hit him right in the nose and down goes Frazier. Everyone yelled and the bus driver pulled over to radio for help. We thought he killed him. Just broke his nose again. I'm sure the jerk thought the first time was a lucky punch and no way a skinny kid will get him twice. Jerky kid now has a flattened boxer's nose. I lost track of Rat a few years after college. He was still skinny and going by Rat. Still a nice guy. Life seemed good for him. This was in the 70s. Today the police would have been called and lawsuits filed. I take my cat to a vet who also has 100 cats living at the clinic. Some of them are just unsociable, some are blind or have other horrible handicaps, and the clinic is basically hospice care for still others. Long story short, the doctor and her staff and volunteers are all saints. Unfortunately, word has gotten out and some people now think of the clinic as the place where you can dump unwanted cats, which they really can't. It's already at capacity. Anyhow, I'm waiting there one day for a routine checkup and this Kardashian looking woman, covered with jewelry and expensive clothes, walks in with a perfectly healthy looking cat. She tells the woman behind the counter, "I'm leaving town. I can't take the cat, so I'm donating it to you guys." The employee explains that no, that's not a sweater in your hands and this isn't goodwill. It doesn't work that way. Oblivious to her surroundings, there are maybe a dozen people there. Between patient parents and staff, the visiting woman isn't even making an effort to talk discreetly. After being refused, she says fine, if you don't take the cat, I'm just going to dump it on the street. She has a brief stare down with the woman behind the counter, maybe assuming that she can guilt the clinic into taking her cat, then walks away. Another customer, a big beefy guy, who's been watching this, intercepts the woman before she can get to the door, and proceeds to say something so vivid, I wish I could repeat it verbatim but I can paraphrase it with some highlights. "Lady, you want to dump the cat? Fine. I'm going to give you what you want. I'll take your cat. But the price is that I'm going to berate you in front of everyone here. You useless freaking C. You're so goddamn selfish you won't even cough up 69 cents a day for a can of Friskies. Frick you. You freaking W. You don't freaking deserve the generosity of the people who work here. You want to freaking blackmail them into preventing a cat murder? You disgust me. If it wasn't for that gold-plated pee dripping between your legs, I'd punch you in the orbital sockets until your eyes bleed. Now get the frick out of my sight before I decide that it'd be worth a battery charge to do it anyway. Frick you. This was Leomi level crap. By now, the doctor herself has shown up. She doesn't know exactly what's happening, but it's gotten pretty loud. Obviously she doesn't like people swearing at other people in her waiting room. It's bad for business. The guy says to her, "Look, you're probably used to it, but I get angry when I see people who mistreat animals." Freshman and sophomore year, the same kid gave me crap at the bus stop and the whole walk home. Every single day, non-stop harassment. Just kept needling me constantly. So many people asked me why I took it, but I was just really shy and passive at that age. I stayed quiet and didn't react. One day the kid tried to push me into some bushes thinking it'd be funny. He'd never gotten physical before. I grabbed his wrist and put him on his butt. He went down on his back and when he tried to get up I put the past 2 years into a single punch that put him right back down. Next day in school, kid had the darkest black eye I'd ever seen. He wasn't at the stop for the next few days and when he started taking it again he never said another word. I shocked a bunch of people, but turns out lots of other kids hated this guy and were jealous I gave him what he had coming. It did a lot of good for me and the positive reaction kind of helped me come out of my shell. 10/10 would punch again. Nice when the defense mechanism kicks in. Once a guy yelled at me and I yelled at him way harder and scared the crap out of him. It wasn't planned. Turns out I can yell loud. I was that kid. I was the nice guy. I grew up poor and matured slower physically than everyone else. I had to be a nice guy BC. If I screwed up my dad would literally beat the crap out of me. I was used to getting in fights with my dad and getting hit hard. In 8th grade I kept getting picked on by a big popular athletic rich cocky cool kid. I never retaliated or stuck up for myself, not out of fear from him or his friends but that I'd get beat up by my dad. One day the cool kid made a comment about my mom. Usually it was about me. This was different. My mom was the one person I could count on to be nice to me. It broke me on the inside. I was still a little guy and much smaller than him but had been in so many fights with my dad by that age that his punches felt like girl slaps. I freaking demolished the kid. I remember being pulled off the kid while pounding the side of my fist against his face Howard style. When I looked back he was still on the ground not moving. I unleashed years of child abuse on that poor kid's face. I feel bad now for what I did. My dad never found out and the cool kid never said another word to me ever. That story made me sad. Hope your situation has improved by now. My extremely docile sister punched me in the face because I kept calling her a dingus. She's never done anything violent in her entire life. Note to self, don't call siblings dingus. The quarterback drunkenly tried to violate her, left him with a black eye, broken arm, and both sprained ankles. Well, rightfully so. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.